never seen a smile so big on my little Lord lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bait and I make plans for 7:45 and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. Who have we got with us? Let's have a look. Let's see who we got. Feel like it's what was that kids show back in the day? Polka Dot Door, when they used to look into the mirror. Well, we're not going to do that. There's no need for that. Listen, to all those who have joined us, thanks so much. Apologize for being late. It's my fault. I've got big shoulders. I'll take the blame. Lots of discussion, obviously, leading up to every live, and sometimes that's just as entertaining, if not a tad bit more than the actual conversation that we have with you folks. But good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much on your Monday to take a little bit of time to stop in. We do have lots to dive into, lots to talk about, lots of updates. Again, be patient, stick with us, because there's a lot of incredible and generous people out there, and we want to get to all of them when it comes to the Christina fundraiser. We're going to be giving an update shortly. First, I want to say hello, James. How you doing, my friend? Always a pleasure to see you. Lloyd's in the house. Again, thanks so much for all your sharing. Jeremy's with us. Rob's with us as well. Richard, all the sharing you do. All you guys and gals who do a ton of sharing. We truly appreciate it. Tim's visiting us on via YouTube. Tim, nice to see you. Tim Barone. Good evening, gents. Good evening to you, Tim. I'm here waiting for Manny to appear. Oh, very good. Tony's in the house. Nice to see you. Mike Howard's here with us. Adrian, haven't seen you in a bit. Nice to see you, Adrian. Always a pleasure. Romper Room. Yes, you're right. You're right, James. It was Romper Room. Needless to say, that's not what we are. We are the Canadian Fishing Network, and we're pleased to have you with us as we are every Monday to discuss everything fishing and perhaps learn a thing or two. Perhaps that we didn't know, we thought we did, and we get corrected. But needless to say, we love generating conversation. So again, do not hesitate to put your comments in the comment section. If you have a question, concern, something you want to mention, by all means, please do. And we'll try and keep it as interactive as possible. Now, to get right to it, because we want to get to our featured guest real quick. And it's going to be very hard to do this quickly, but I want to remind everybody, of course, this weekend is the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show, and it is back as it is indicated there on the advertisement. It is going to be at the International Center, as it always is, and I'm just trying to pick up the details here. There we go. All right. So these are the details. If, in fact, you are interested in coming, it is going to be a great event. Really looking forward to it. It is at the International Center, as I had mentioned. And for whatever reason, I can't open up the link that will tell us all of the information that I need to perhaps give you. Okay, here we go. All right. The Ultimate Fishing is back. Join us Black Monday, Friday weekend at the International Center to prepare for the much anticipated ice fishing season. Lots of seminars and contests happening, along with an extensive marketplace to stock up on everything you may need. Of course, it starts Saturday, November 25th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Again on Sunday, the 26th, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. General admission is $10 per person. Children under 12 are free. And get this, there is free parking. And of course, there's going to be lots of seminars, likely including some of our lovely guests that come here every Monday. I'm sure Jay will share with us. Jim might be coming down as well. Again, we will confirm all this when we get to our speakers. But let's get to the incredible fundraiser that is because of you folks. Again, shout out to my good buddy Brad for helping set up a few of these prizes and initially getting this whole thing started. Brad is going to be at the forefront of a lot of what we're doing next year, whether it be our next gen NOWT or just here at CFN. So, as I said, give back in the only way we can truly say thank you to Brad, and anything that you see available at Pal Castings, who is also going to be at the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show. If you're looking for weights, you're looking for jig heads, you're looking for terminal tackle, stop in and see Brad, Pal Casting. He's going to be there at the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show along with us. First and foremost, big shout out to all of our guides and charters. Thanks again to Adam and Michelle for setting a charter up in honor of Christine. Of course, Tyler. We're going to be getting to a lot of pictures, small little videos, snippets, reels, all kinds of stuff to try and help promote these folks. Tyler's doing a fantastic job lately at Launch Donkey, and we are truly appreciative of his donation. Of course, Sparkus, I tell you, this guy's a multi-species charter captain, and he's holding a walleye there, but let's face it, he loves the smallies. He loves muskie. He loves just about anything that swims. So when it comes to a charter, again, if you're the lucky winner, it'll probably be a discussion that you will have with Sparkus to decide where you're going to go. Brian also is a multi-species angler, but loves to target muskie. Love having muskie guides because, as I said, they are a rare fish, difficult to target, difficult to locate sometimes. But Brian's certainly going to help us out with that. So, again, thanks so much. And then you've got a day of fishing. These are gents that wanted to give an away that would provide a day out in honor of Christina, and would love to see some CFNers join. So good luck if you win Twisted Circle of Chrome with Mike Howard, a day out with the Fanatics Outdoor Adventures, Jen and Scott. Perhaps you'll be targeting muskie as well. And then, of course, our good friend Colin Stass. This gentleman loves a smallmouth bass, and he knows a thing or two about catching them. So he's offered up a date with him as well. So, again, to all these folks, I can't thank you enough. And, of course, the grand prize is a 2-night stay at Camp McIntosh. Andre and Tracy, a big shout out to you two, again, for your support, believing in what we do here at CFN and everything that we try to push. Any initiative that we try to embark on, they're usually right there to help us. So Andre, Tracy, thanks so much for that. Now to get to some of the prizes, if you will. And these are going to be Ontario-based prizes. If you live in Ontario, it's going to be a lot easier to grant you this prize because you'll be able to attend some of these incredible charters and guides and opportunities. When it comes to out of province, because you're just as much important to us as those who live in Ontario, and don't ever think otherwise, because you are. This is why we have done such a great job to make sure that there's prizes set aside for you folks as well. Again, Big Jim McLaughlin, he'll be up here shortly. There's a prize pack put together on behalf of him. Of course, I met with Chris Yalowicki from Yawley Fish Lures, and he has provided an incredible prize pack that I just picked up. And this is what it includes: stickers. I love these Duramax holders that we're going to get to shortly. These Duramax holders you can get at the dollar store. Our good buddy Moose was the one that put us onto that. We're seeing a lot more of those. The case is included. It's quite a little tackle pack, but needless to say, it's worthy of a $25 donation. Also, of course, we have Meigs, and I'm going to play this little snippet. If you're not familiar with these jigs and with the ice fishing season almost upon us, you might want to get to know these, because I have seen firsthand how well some of these jigs can work. So again, big shout out to James for being as generous as he is. And of course, he's on top of these things as well. Anything that we seem to do here at CFN, we're lucky to have him aboard. But if you're looking for that special color, perhaps you're looking for a custom, reach out to James. I'm sure he'll be able to put it together. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we're going to be doing a hard water session with him so he can teach us right out on the hard water how to fish with one of these, how to correctly fish with one of these, because I'm sure there's various ways, but needless to say, we're going to look forward to James spending some time with us. But in the meantime, if you're looking for these, maybe your stockpile has dwindled a little bit, reach out to Meeks Lures or James personally and see what you can get a hold of. But again, thanks so much to James for helping us out with that. And as he always does, Ugly Boys Baits, great prize pack, which will include a variety of terminal tackle. You're going to get spinner baits. You're going to get inline spinners. You're going to get jig heads. Ugly Boys, they've done us so proud at CFN, and we're lucky to have them again. So a big shout out. Creek Candy, also our good buddy Randy, the Candy Man, has put together a pro pack and then some. So there's going to be lots of beads if you folks are steelheads or chrome seekers. This will be a prize pack that you will definitely want to get your mitts on. Mad Can Plastics, nice little prize pack that A-Rod's put together. A big shout out to him. Thanks so much. And of course to our boy Chuck D from Bait and Bite Me. A nice little prize pack in honor of Christina. Plus there's a little surprise as well that he'll be, I'm sure, delivering sooner than later. So stay tuned to that. Really, really cool. But there is so many other things, including a prize pack from Cabby's Custom Jigs, and that came this week. And again, these Duramax boxes, thanks so much, Robbie, for setting these up. These are becoming really popular, and you'll understand why. If you ever get a couple in your hand and you're able to put some tackle away, you'll understand what we're talking about. These tackle packs, they hold quite a few stick baits and various other plugs. But these are painted by our good buddy Robbie and his girls. They do a fantastic job. I mean, the detail on some of this stuff is remarkable. A nice, I don't even know what you call this, but it's like a toxic perch almost. High fidelity perch. Nice little crankbaits. Bit of a whopper poplar there with a perch pattern. You got all kinds of stuff, spooks. And just so you know, the hooks are nice and sharp. We've got spokes, the Zaras. If you're a topwater angler, you love your Zaras. And of course, there's some musky stuff as well that he's put. I've seen a whole bunch of blade baits that he's got in here as well. Let me just open up the package so you folks can have a look. But there's, again, you could stash a whole bunch of stuff. There's like big blades, big blade baits. And I love the red hooks. As everyone knows, I'm a big fan of red hooks. This is an interesting bait. I haven't seen one of these with a skull head on it, but it almost looks like a variation of the Fireman Diamonds. It's an inline spinner, but look at the skull. That's interesting. I've never seen that before. I love the creativity that goes into these baits that Cabby's puts together. But again, we've got spinners, we got bucktails, we got all kinds of stuff here. But big shout out to Robbie and the girls for putting this from Cabby's Custom. Can't thank you folks enough. And of course, my good buddy Chris Church put together this Stanley Cup. It is signed by the one and only Marcel Dion. We'll be doing some photos with that as well. Lots going on. Again, it's a $25 donation. That's all we're looking for. That will help out in a huge way. As you know, the GoFundMe account has probably been dropped down. Mike Cole for setting that up. Big tip of the hat to you. As I said, you've been the one that's been managing that. They raised a good chunk of money that will help go towards the funeral expenses for Christina. We're going to hopefully be able to top up and get rid of the remainder or the balance of what is owing on the funeral. And then anything over and above that we collect is going to go into a trust fund for Cassidy, who we're going to be featuring tomorrow. So anybody who doesn't know Cassidy, which is Christina's daughter, you're going to get to know Cassidy, because this is truly why we're doing it. We're doing it to honor Christina, but she would want it done in a way that was going to benefit somebody to have a great time. I can assure you she wouldn't want all this hubla, but we miss her, we love her, and we're doing it for her because, as I said, it is a tragic loss. It hit all of us very hard, and to Tracy, to Renee, to anybody who is dealing with her loss and mourning her loss, our heart and prayers go out with you. We're thinking of you daily. So, again, it's just a way we can commemorate. It's a way that we can say, thanks, Christina, for all you have done for our community. We love you. We miss you. And we're hoping that you're in peace and somehow having some fun wetting a line. But yeah, it's a tough one. It as I said, it's hard to explain. It's hard to understand, but sometimes it's just about coping. So hopefully you can. In the meantime, as I said, if you are interested in helping out, it is basically just an e-transfer. It's very simple. E-transfer $25 to scottiesoutdoors@gmail.com. We update the list. I'd like to say regularly, daily. Bob Bissonette, I believe, is the last one that I have listed as donating. Anybody else who hasn't, or perhaps maybe you want to do it a second time. We are going to also be taking donations at the ice fishing show. So we'll have ballots. I'll have them printed out. You folks can fill them out and hand them back to me at the ice fishing show. If you don't like it, electronic e-transfers and all that, see me at the OFC Nation booth, along with Moose and whoever else from our CFN and OFC Nation community on Saturday. We got Big Jim. I think that's it. If I've missed anybody, please forgive me. Oh, and of course, I can't forget Shimano has donated a 2500 series Noski, one of the new Noskis. So the outer provinces, as I said, it's very similar. I do have it on good authority that we might see a few tickets for some Toronto teams that might be made available. Don't hold me to it, but that's what I'm being told. In the meantime, as I said, $25 donation enters you into the draw that will be on Boxing Day for what prizes you have seen, and perhaps maybe some that I haven't done a very good job promoting, talking about, discussing, or just showing them off. In the meantime, it's Big Jim right after this.
Yo.
The Friendly Giant.
What's going on, buddy?
Wow, that Jeremy just said it's Big Jim, CFN's version of the Friendly Giant. I like that, Jeremy. That's actually good.
Yeah, it's coming along, eh?
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. It's due to a lot of hard work. And as I said, you're in there at least every time I hear Jim and see you on Facebook. Yeah, you're in there every
3
day.
to 4 times a week. I didn't get in on the weekend. I usually go over early in the morning when no one's there. I've got a little fob thing for the door there.
Yeah.
And I usually go over then, but I was in there. It was so funny. I was in there this morning. There was a young girl in there, and I think she's South American. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And she has an accent that's so strong I was just going, oh yeah. I felt like an idiot. I couldn't till she chattered away. And talk about strong.
Wow.
Like she put the bar down to do deadlifts, and she just put a 45 on each end. She did about 8 or 10. She put 2 more 45s on, did about 8 or 10. And her form, you could put it in a book.
Wow.
And she had really good form lifting too. No, just kidding.
Oh my Lord. All right. Well, before we get off the rails,
Hey, this rig went off the rails a long time ago, buddy.
Jim, you sent me something, and is one thing that we never want to talk about is fish being smart, but that excludes mammals. And you sent us something, or the group chat anyway, this week that I want to say, is it fact or is it FO? I don't even want to
Well, there's
say.
something going on there.
But dude, this is remarkable, folks. Have a look at this. As I said, there is a little bit of audio, but what you see here is a whole bunch of porpoises, and in the center of this, there's a whale. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. The description that they leave you with is that these porpoises surrounded the whale, knowing that it was about to give birth, and they're protecting it.
Yeah, you'll see the whale in the middle here any second there.
There it is.
Unless they're eating it. But that was what they said, that there was the whale had or was about to give birth, and that they scared sharks away. I don't know. I'm not a biologist. I doubt most biologists would even know what that was.
Oh, but you know what? Let's just say that it is what we see it as, what it was described as.
Yep.
And we're gonna go with it because anybody loves fish, they love dolphins, and they certainly are intrigued at how smart they are. We talked about times during war times, what they were instructed to do, what they were able to do. We see them at Marineland and various other parks doing all kinds of tricks. So they're trainable, they're smart, but I didn't realize that they were that smart.
Well, I think you've heard me talk about that orca that they have. So I don't call them killer whales anymore.
Yes. Yep.
Lawrence has got me trained now.
He'll be so proud.
And then he called them killer whales last week, remember?
Yes, that was funny.
We were talking, it was so funny. But when you see a killer whale, that thing with that, there's a fishing boat docked at a harbor in British Columbia somewhere. And the guys are hosing it down with the big fire hose thing. I mean, it's major water. And they drop the hose and it goes in the water. And a killer whale gets it and he's spraying them after they've been spraying him with it. And then he lets it go, and he swims around out of the water. And it's a big killer whale, like 20 feet long. You know what I mean? And he's flopping around doing his thing. And all of a sudden, he picks the hose up again and starts spraying them again. So I mean, he was playing. You know what I mean? Unless he was trying to wash them off the boat and become a real killer whale. I don't know, but it was just to watch him. And this whale, it's documented. There's there's some Aboriginal people that live on the West Coast, and they go out and they would drive around with him. He'd come beside them, and then I guess something happened to him because he wasn't from a pod of whales. He sort of broke away and was on his own, and
Right.
he got hit by a boat.
Oof.
A boat hit him, and they think he died from the injuries. They're not sure, but it was pretty old too. But still. But it's just so cool that this whale. I mean, you look it up. Her name her name is Luna.
Mm-hmm.
Just look up Luna killer whale. It pops up. And it used to play catch.
Yeah,
You've seen that. That's the one. I mean,
that's the one. Wow. Douglas, we are honored to have Douglas a part of our community because he brings us a vantage point that a lot of us don't get to see up in the far north. And of course, the customs and traditions that go on up there,
yeah.
Whether it's a whale hunt, whether they're going out to do any kind of scouting, whether it be fishing, whatever. And Douglas takes us along. We really appreciate that because it exposes us to something that we're not familiar with. But I can only imagine, Douglas, how difficult it gets up in our north. What the struggles are dealing with the polar bears, the rogue whale, this, that, and everything else. And of course, narwhals, as Douglas mentioned, when they have a young. I mean, we're doing it for the sake of the community. And hats off to all of you when it is a success. But I can imagine when it is not a success, it can be a horrific story in the end. And you guys put your lives on the line up there. And again, big shout
I'd
out.
love to see a killer whale or a narwhal in the wild. I know we have the running joke with me and Lawrence. I got the pictures of them bobbing around in the hole up north and everything. But to see one of those in real life, wow.
100%. And you see it all. Yes, you're right, Mike. The belugas playing catch all the time. There was a young girl in the St. Lawrence, I believe, and she was throwing a ball over the side of the boat, and the beluga kept throwing it back. Just amazing. And Jim, we're not just talking about this as fillers. Like, you truly have a passion for this kind of stuff.
Oh, I love it. I watch it. I feel it's really neat. I've often said this. You'll think this is funny. I've often said to people that I thought somehow I was like I can go out. I mean, I remember all the pictures I had of my deer in the garage. They're coming to me and all this stuff. Me and animals got something. I don't know what it is. I think I'm not evolved quite as far as. I'm not saying I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm more on their level, I think.
That is so funny.
Well, they look at me and they go, "Well, he's obviously full, so we don't have to worry about trying to eat us." Or I don't know.
See, I look at it differently. Like, I mean, I would. That's why I never swim in the ocean, because the minute a shark took a look at me and say, "I don't have to eat for a month if I grab a hold of that." So,
if I was ever out somewhere and there was an orca came to the boat, I swear to God, I would get in the water with it.
Really,
I would have zero fear, because like they don't eat people. It's
you're a different breed than I can assure you.
I've done some stupid things in my life, but this, hey guys, watch me.
Justin also mentioned that there is a 20% off at Gano Sports. I'm hoping this is for the ice fishing show. If you order it online, save $38 on 6. I know I'm off topic.
SLXXT, yeah.
Oh, the SL. Oh, sorry. Okay, right on. Good to know, Justin. But speaking of which, the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show, Jim, are you going to be down this weekend?
Yeah, I'm the MC.
Yes, I figured as much.
Yeah, It's really funny. I was just talking with Victoria at Vita before you, just getting the hotel reservations and stuff. And she says, "Jim, is there anything else you need? Let me know, please." And I said, "Well, can you get me a wheelchair?" And she came back with a panicked look. I thought, "What happened?" I said, "Nothing. I'm just on the weekend there. I was telling you there, I wasn't happy. Today, my body's a whole different story."
That's good. Well,
on the weekend there, I was a lost soul with pain. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I could not find anywhere that I was comfortable. And then I woke up at 4:30 this morning, and it was like, "Where did it go?"
As MC Jim, what are some of have you been told any of the highlights of the show? Some things that we can.
Well, I believe there's a $5,000 giveaway once again this year. I mean, it's sponsored by Clam Hummingbird, and don't quote me. I'm not sure. There's other people, but I know Clam and Hummingbird are in there big time, like they were last year. And he's got a lot of giveaway stuff. He's got sonars to give away. Pile of stuff. Yeah.
True North Baits. I think Jamie's on with us right now. They've got a deal at the show as well. So make sure if you're interested.
He's got a bunch of clothing too. I think he's put a pile of clothing. I've seen his ads for it. Yeah. Hoodies and t-shirts. Won't have anything real man size, but he's still got some stuff.
Well, all right. Let's move right along. Huge deals, as he would say. I don't want to see Jamie's comment after that, but nonetheless, he is a good cat, so I'm sure he'll be fine.
Got a passion for it.
100%, and you have to. Like, I mean, to spend that kind of time. Like, I'm enamored by all of them. Chris from Y'all Lures, Brad. I mean, all these folks. Chuck D up in our North Country in Timmins. Like, it's amazing to see what these folks can do. The creativity.
He's doing this for a living.
Yeah, that too.
You know what I mean? It's not like me where I have all the other stuff and I make jigs for, sort of like as I always call it, the hobby that got way out of control.
Yeah.
It's some of the people. I mean, there's a lot of small manufacturers out there, guys that are doing it, like like Brandon, the perfect jig.
Mhm.
Mark Lobel, who's the
Mhm.
weapons of mass destruction. He's up in Petawawa. He's still an active member of the armed forces, but he's setting himself up for when he retires because he'll be getting out soon and he's going to make jigs for a living. He's made his mind up and he's on it and it's working good for him. So it's really, really cool.
It's awesome. Just to answer your question, Manny, again, tickets are $10. Children under 12 are free, and parking is also free. So $10. You and the Sauce Queen, it's $20 to get in, and we appreciate you buying a ticket, and we look forward to seeing you all there this weekend at the International Center. Jim, we touched on the first of 4 segments that we managed to put together out in the water. Actually, I was surprised that we were able to get 4 because there was a few. There was just too much wind sound.
Yeah, what happened with the wind one?
The wind one, unfortunately, it just I couldn't salvage it. It's I know.
And it was the one thing that was really like different.
I know.
I did something I'd never done before. We caught a bunch of fish and
I tried. I put it through several filters. I could not. It literally is 90% wind. That's literally all you hear. But it was a windy day. Needless to say, we were up in the water. We'll do it again. But let's talk about the first segment because there's a lot of interesting stuff. And I mean, I know it's only one basic topic that you're talking about, but there's a lot that can be you can pass this on to various other ways of approaching structure. So
anything that you fish, anything that you do.
Yep.
Folks, when you come up on a piece of structure like this, just some old fallen trees here, got the sun beating on it, it's in October here, don't throw right in the middle to start. Always fish around the edges first. So I'd cast that over there. Fish around the edges, let it get down. Don't be in a rush to get it back to you. But fish around the edges first. We got lots of wind today. And then get inside a little bit more. Jump in there. But always fish it, like do it methodically. Don't be in a rush, like you'd often assume that the fish are right in the middle. But quite often it's around the edges. And there you go. Just like that. Off the edges. Get out of here. Come here, buddy. And that's why you fish the edges first. No giant, but hey, let me tell you, I'll take that all day, any day. And look at a good hookup because I'm fishing it slow, gives them lots of time to inhale it. That's the reason why you go to the outside edges first. It works.
It works. It's just as simple as that, Jim.
Yeah, and that was if you look at that, if you go watch it again and look at it, and you'll see there's 2 distinct pieces of wood, and there's a big opening in the middle. That's why I went to the left-hand side. Then I went to the right-hand side of the piece of wood, and then I just decided to go to the outside. And I think I fished with a jig. That's when I started getting. Well, no, I got bit off a lot in the beginning.
Yes, you did.
Just in the time that we went from my house to there was 5 fish, just boom. And I lost a pile of jigs. It's good. I get to buy more flipping jigs. No.
No,
I'm
very
buying 2 here and 3 there. I don't know why I buy jigs. Guys always want to give them to me, but I look at a jig and go, "Ooh, look at that!" And I got to have it. It's what it is because there's so many independent guys making jigs. That's why you get so many different different colors. But that chatterbait, I've been using that for years now. That color, I think it's either midnight. I think it's midnight black or midnight blue. So it's like that. But I mean, that's one of the things that Mark makes. I was always a light chatterbait guy. I was a light colored guy for a chatterbait because I thought I used it more in open water. And then I started to use them like when they came to be. I used them more in open water and covered a lot of water and stuff like that. And then I started fishing them in, letting them get down in the weeds, using some that were up to an ounce, letting them sink in the weeds and ripping them out so the blade vibrates up. And as it sinks back down, it gets eaten like it'll be sinking. You see the line jump. But it's paying attention and doing things methodically like that. And I don't care what you're fishing for. You hear me talk a lot about when we talk in the summertime about guys, they go in, or girls, they go into a bunch of pads. And what do? They look in the back and they see a stick in the pads and they whistle the frog back they get snagged or they catch a fish this big and it makes all the splash and everything else, I think it just puts the rest off. Just for a bit, you know what I mean? It puts it off. That's why you have to be methodical. You got to stop, 50 feet away, fish the edge, then move the boat up 10, 15, 20 feet, fish inside, and you work like that. And when you work like that, you'll catch a lot more fish regardless of what you're doing. I don't care. I know Sonia commented about having trout in ponds and fishing at the edge of the you see a bunch of fish sitting there and you fish way out from them out in the edge and one comes out to eat it, so you don't spook them all. And things like that. It just, you never want to land a lure on top of the fish.
No,
That's
true enough.
not a good deal. You get bit. I've done it. I've cast lures and the lure hits the water and I think I spook something and it's actually eating it, because you got to remember when a fish is sitting there, it's like a left fielder, right? I mean, if he sees something coming, lands in water in front of him, there's a good chance he's going to snap at it, So, but being methodical, whether you're ice fishing, whatever you're doing. Thanks, Steve. Midnight Magic, yeah.
No, but I will say, Jim, when I went through the tape and I was doing some of the editing, one thing that I noticed that I didn't notice when I was in the water because I was focused more on the camera and what we were shooting. You're always looking. Oh, there it is there. Yep.
All chewed up. Got the rhythm wave on the back.
Yeah, that fish caught, or that bait
That's
caught.
The one that I actually cut off. You can see the line on it where I cut it off.
Yeah.
Ouch. Hook still there.
So watching you fish, as I said, going through a lot of the video, you're always looking. And I don't know if this is more a tournament angler or if it's just a pro angler, for lack of a better way of explaining it. You're always looking to the next cast. As you're fishing, you can always tell you're always looking to your next cast.
Oh yeah, because the number of times, like when I was guide and I would say to people, here, really and quick, there's a stump coming up there. And I had never been there before, but I see it. That's why the glasses all the time to see. And I tell them, throw your line over there. Cast over there, boom, they catch a fish. Stuff like that. And the same thing, like when I fish tournaments, you're fishing here, you're right on, just on point with the line, the rod, feeling, know what's going on, but I'm looking for the next place that it's going to go. And it's, when you learn to do things like that, that's when you're really up it, because you don't miss anything. You don't have to step on the electric motor. Like I see guys, they see a boulder coming up. What's the first thing they do? They step on the electric, they reverse it, step on it, make a big swoosh of water. It washes over the rock or the stump or whatever. If there was a fish there, it's gone. That's why you always got to be looking way ahead. Like if you were to watch Rocky and I when we fished together, it was just when flipping became a thing. And we'd be going down a bank of, undercut bulrushes. We used to call it floating tundra. You'd be good. Yeah, it works. It doesn't work as much as it used to, but back then it was stupid. You could catch, 50, 60, 70 fish in a day in a lot of the lakes and go back the next day and catch maybe 40 or 50 off the same thing. It was nuts. But you would watch our jigs literally landing 18 inches past where the other guys did.
Wow.
As we pitched. And that's catching every fish available. And that's why you'll hear sometimes these guys talk about, you watch them fishing and they talk about having to fish crazy slow, because they're only one line. They have to hit every spot, because it doesn't do any good if you know there's fish there and you only fish half the water. That's why you hear that word thorough with me all the time. And it doesn't make a difference if it's bass or pike or whatever you're doing. Paying attention to things like that are just so key. It's absolutely, incredible the difference it'll make. And I see myself sometimes, because I'm nowhere near as in tune, as you've heard me say this often, as I used to be. But every once in a while, boy, my brain just locks in. And I almost don't like it, because I stop having as much fun. But it's
now,
all good. But
I got to ask the question now, based on what you showed us with that video and everything, and you did a fantastic job explaining it. Does anything change at all when it comes to how you approach with forward-facing sonar? And I'm asking that question only because if you approach something like that with the knowledge that you have, those fish, you're not going to be surprised, I would think, Jim, that they're going to be where they are. You're
you would have seen those fish with a forward-facing sonar,
right?
It's set up right.
Yeah,
you would have seen those fish, because there's just a few branches under the water there. There's a lot of little twigs and stuff.
Right.
You would have seen them, and you would have probably, uh, there was a lot of fish because we caught the big one just around the back of it and everything else. And it's just, yeah, no, you would definitely have caught those fish. You would have just known that they were there. And then who knows, I might have made a slight adjustment if I would have seen them. I might have thought to myself, well, perhaps this one's closer to me, like I talked about, so I wouldn't have cast this far. You
Right.
know, I'm assuming that there was one other fish in there that I'm sure hit a bait too. It hit the jig when I threw the jig in. Now the only thing we caught on the jig that day was a pike.
Yes, and it was the first fish.
Well, that was on the crankbait. I didn't lose that one. Remember? It was
Oh,
the,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, right, right.
And then I
Yes.
decided to go to the jig and I pick it up and I throw it out and I didn't even start to retrieve it and it's gone. Just see the line just jump and it was gone. But yeah, so there was at least 2, 3 fish in there. The big one around the back, or the bigger one, and it's just it's paying attention. I can't stress it, but I
100%.
have to be like that because of what I've done in the past.
Right.
I can't go out with 2 guys in a houseboat, and I've done it, and it's just horrible. I come home a nervous wreck, drop the anchor, they open a beer, and just cast from the boat. That's it. I last about 2 minutes at that, and I'm going out of my mind.
Yeah, and as I said, with the forward-facing sonar, do you think that the intricacies of knowing some of this stuff that you're passing on is lost, from new anglers, or do you think before they even get these forward-facing sonars, they know this?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Yeah, I've often said, because I think people that have started fishing, or I should say started tournament fishing and really got involved in it, obviously because it's catered more to smallmouth in our area now. Not that you can't use it for largemouths. I know lots of guys have caught huge largemouths and piles of them, with it. But they catch it off stuff they would have probably caught them off anyway. Where with more with that open water stuff for the smallmouths is
Right.
when they're seeing them. But I shared the boat with somebody about 3 years ago one day for an afternoon out in the back here. And I was shocked that they barely knew how to use a bait caster.
Really?
Yeah. Because they had started tournament fishing and most of their fishing has been done since the inception of the smallmouths, getting so big and growing, the water temperature, the food, whatever. Bruce Tufts will tell you it's mostly water temperature. It gave them a longer growing season because I guess that that extra few weeks makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference in their growth at the beginning of the year too, and it's just
Well, I will say this: Tyler Brooks from Slaunchdocky intercepted transmission between some fish that apparently weren't talking too nicely about us anglers, and they set up this meme, Jim. And I do this with all due respect. I'm not here to upset anybody, but me and the fellas looking at 20 fish on live scope, trying to figure out why they ain't biting.
That's hilarious. It's true though. Because that's people think it's going to mean you catch all the fish. The St. Lawrence River, the best smallmouth fishery in the world, bar none.
Yeah,
It keeps proving it every year. It just keeps getting better. I mean, they're all almost on par. There's several areas that have this. There's still guys that were out there fishing for smallmouth, weighed 2 fish in on the second day.
Yeah.
Things like that. They were out of it on the first or second day because of something like that, and they got more sonar. It just, can it help you find them? Yeah, but you gotta have more to go with it. And these are guys that are like dynamite fishermen.
True enough.
They're guys that have won there before, not making the cut.
True enough.
So it's not the secret.
100%. Our half hour flies by as it always does. Looking really forward to seeing you this weekend at the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show. Anything in particular you're look forward to seeing besides just the people this weekend?
Oh, just everybody. I'm going to pick up Gord Pizer's grandson Liam there down at the university in Kingston, and I told him, he messaged me. He says, "Hey, I didn't hear back from you. If you still have a seat, are you going to go down Saturday morning?" And I said, "Well, I'm not getting up at 3:00 in the morning to be there for 9. I'll be so tired. tired at the end of the day, they'll have to just fling me in behind the stage with a sandwich and leave me there for the night. Won't be going to the hotel.
I'll
God.
make sure to come check
And
on you.
and he says to me, he says, if you still have a seat. And I said, oh God, I forgot. I told him, and Liam, I drive him nuts, eh? And I says, oh my God, I forgot all about you. I said, well, look, I'll get you a sleeping bag and we put you in the box. I have a tonneau cover. And he's like, he doesn't know what to say.
That's hilarious.
I was talking to Gord today. He was laughing too. It was good. We're getting, but we're working on the winter issue, full steam ahead on that, the ice fishing issue. So
Good.
some good stuff.
Well,
Got some good stuff from Dr. Cook once again coming.
Sweet.
Stuff
Sweet.
from Mr. Pizer, Mr. Brosdahl. Where's the list? Oops. Still got you there? Yeah, I got some stuff coming from the boys from Clam,
Nice.
from Matt Johnson and those guys. Tim Allard, obviously, Dr. Cook. What's the guy's name again? He was in Oshawa last week there.
Rob Jones?
No, he won the Bassmaster Classic there. Jeff Gustafson.
Oh, Gussie. Oh.
I got him, Dave Chong, and I got Daniel Notarani. I always say his name wrong. Chong's buddy. He does the Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Fishing page.
Yeah.
We're going to start having that page in Just Fishing.
That's
awesome. Just going to be a page, and we'll take that. So that'll be something new for the people to look at, because he's always got some interesting stuff on kayak fishing, fly fishing, stuff that I don't touch on as much. Well, very seldom. I pay good money to see me in a kayak, but
you and me both, dude.
Hey, we should do that. We should get 2 kayaks and put the 2 of us in it. Get it.
Wow.
And no wonder why it'll look like we're just sitting in the water. The kayak will be on the bottom and our heads sticking out of the water.
Well, it was funny. I was talking to Chris Moose's buddy, who's going down to the Classic on behalf of Canada in the kayak division. And he said, Scotty, you should get a kayak. I said, yeah, the problem is they don't blow mold my kayak. They got to weld it together. So they're still welding it, from what I understand. But needless to say, Jim, it's always a pleasure to spend some time with you. Look forward to seeing you this weekend. Drive safe. And
if there's anybody here, don't send me a note. Excuse me. Don't send me a note after the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show and say, "Oh, I saw you, Big Jim." Come and talk to me. I don't bite. I had 2 or 3 of those last year. Guys, well, I saw you there. Well, what was I doing? Well, I don't know. You're eating, having a water, whatever. Getting mouth to mouth because you passed out.
Right on. Good advice, Jim. Look forward to it, and I can guarantee you, I will not have any apprehension to come up and give you a big, sloppy kiss and hug.
Oh, Jesus!
Yeah. On that note, Jim,
I'm gonna have nightmares tonight now.
There you go, dude. All the best, my friend.
Be good, kiddies.
Lawrence is coming up next, right after this.
When it comes to Canadian food, we've got your back with flavors like lemon pepper, beer batter, campfire barbecue, lemon pepper dill, garlic butter and chives, and crispy Cajun. We've got a mix for every meal. Whether you're serving East Coast shrimp, West Coast salmon, succulent walleye, chicken wings, or veggies, we've got you covered. Coat your food in outdoor flavors. Available online or at these fine retailers.
Lawrence Gunther in the house.
Hey, buddy.
Good to see you, Lawrence. And I apologize for you not being able to see the clip that we showed.
Yeah,
be right up your fancy as well. I mean, I'm absolutely blown away at how smart dolphins, porpoises can be. I never in a million years thought that they would know or have the ability to know when a whale is in some kind of danger or distress, knowing that it might be pregnant, and they're doing that. Almost hard to believe.
Well, what it shows and what people have been arguing for and against for years, right, is are dolphins are sentient animals, right? Do they have more than just, hot, cold, hungry, tired, horny, want to make guard baby kind of feelings? This shows that they have empathy. And empathy is a higher order emotion than just your basic survival and get lucky sort of drives, your basic drives to survive and thrive and propagate and guard your territory, things like that. this shows that these animals have empathy for other animals and animals that are not part of their own species. So that's why that video is so, it rocks a lot of people's beliefs about mammals, about dolphins, because you're clearly seeing that these dolphins are protecting a member of another species for what reason, right? Just because they want to.
Unreal. And as I said, it's hundreds, if not thousands, of these things circling that whale. Just blew me away when Jim sent that. It really caught me off guard, because I never in a million years would have thought they'd have the ability to do that. But that's the beautiful thing about animals. They push the envelope, and they make us the students sometimes of the limit to their abilities. Lawrence, you've been busy as always. This, as I said, like every other podcast that Lawrence and I do, is going to be available on Bluefish Canada and Bluefish Radio. So make sure you head over there. If you have missed any of our past podcasts, you can look it up. There's quite the library. And of course, all the upcoming new guests and old guests that Lawrence has had on his podcast, some really interesting cats. You had one just recently that you posted and tagged CFN in. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Pat Nye, he's the he's the president of the Future Angler Foundation. Now, they've made about 9 25-minute TV episodes. Many of them played on public service broadcasting. They get about 3 to 4 million views for these TV shows that show youth how to fish, how to catch fish. They've been funded by the U.S. Marine Department of Coast Guard down in the States to create a bunch of videos on safe boating. Now, isn't that great? Eh? Like, you're teaching kids not just to fish, but safe boating, because, what kid doesn't want to get into some sort of watercraft, a kayak, a canoe, whatever will float them out there to get to the fish, right? So teaching them some of those skills is really important too. So Pat and I had a good chat, about the Future Angler Foundation, where they're going, where they've been, the mission. And, he's such a humble guy. And we're just talking and exchanging stories and comparing notes. We started talking about, things that are changing out there and the need to educate young people to become, aware of the stresses going on in fish and fish habitat, and become more stewards to make sure that's protected, and not just protected against anglers, not that, protected against the ravages of extreme weather. And what can we do to make sure fish have a chance to recover from those extreme weather events and other types of events, habitat loss, chemical spills, invasive species. All those things are happening in real time out there. We had a good chat. And then, I'm reading a few days later after we record all this, and I see a message from Pat Nye, the president of the National Professional Anglers Association. So, this guy's wearing 2 hats, and he's too humble to even mention that hat. It's just, what a great guy.
That's amazing. Wow. And a wealth of knowledge, and hopefully to our benefit as anglers. It will help better our fisheries, better our relationships with the wild and with fish as they are. And at the end of the day, enhance the idea that we are going to be able to protect our pastime for a number of years and decades to come.
Yeah, isn't that what it comes down to, right? Like, have fun, because fishing is fun. And if you read the editorial in the Bluefish News that came out last Monday, we love fishing. If fishing is fun, fishing is, it wakes up that deep down DNA inside us all to go catch fish, feed our family, feed ourselves, just go out and catch fish. And it's so fundamentally fun. It really is a great distraction, and teaching kids that and sharing that fun with kids. We all become kids in a sense when we go fishing, but there's always some responsibility as well that goes along with that, right? So as adults, we have to show that as well and teach the young ones that as well, for sure.
True enough.
Yeah.
All right, sir. I know you've got a long list of news articles to get to. I don't want to hold you up any further, so have at her.
All right. So, hey, good news in northern Newfoundland. The cod stocks are rebounding. Yay. They closed that fishery 31 years ago in 1992. And it looks like it's not completely closed. It hasn't been completely closed for a while. There's some very, very minimal cod fishing going on, but it looks like they're going to open that up a little more, that the cod stocks have rebounded to the point where it can sustain some greater commercial fishing activity. 30,000 people were laid off in 1992. 30,000 people were laid off in Atlantic Canada. I'm talking everyone from people who had fishing licenses to people, their family members who processed the fish in all those hundreds and hundreds of fish cleaning, stations set up along the coast of Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI. 30,000 people lost their jobs. They got $225 a week for 10 weeks to get them over and into a new career.
And really, there's not a lot of options out there. I suppose there's always work, there's always something to do. But maybe you are the breadwinner of your family, and all of a sudden they shut down the processing plant, take your quotas away. Your life has changed dramatically.
Just as Scotty, this is the same time, the steel mills were being shut down because the Chinese were starting to produce steel cheaper than we could in North America. It was the same time the coal mines were being shut down, and it wasn't, that around that time that one coal mine in Nova Scotia exploded, that the government was trying to reopen and reinvigorate, and a whole bunch of people lost their lives. So, coal mining on the East Coast, it's gone. Steel mills gone. There was a big push there to create a heavy water plant for all the CANDU reactors we're going to sell around the world for people to generate electricity with. That never happened. That was a $5 billion white elephant that had to be torn down in the end. And then tourism, people say, well, it's so beautiful out there. There's tourism. Scotty, people go to Atlantic Canada for July, August, and seniors go maybe in September, October to see the leaves change. That's it. 4 months a year, right? The rest of the time, not that much fun out there when it's rainy and blustery. And it's.
And we're going to be reminded of that this week when this system that's coming up from Colorado goes to our East Coast and dumps a whole bunch of snow. We'll be reminded very quickly how short their season is when it comes from a tourist standpoint. Douglas mentioned here in the comments, and I would have to agree, Douglas. I think I think folks are more shocked that reminding them that 1992 is actually 31 years ago. That in itself is hard to believe. You're so right, Douglas. But what I'm interested to know, Lawrence, is this commercial fishing when it comes to cod? Is this geared more to the inshore fishermen, or are they going to open this up even outside of the boundaries?
Well, that's the big question, right? Who's got the gear? Who's got the equipment? The fact that the fish processing plants do not exist. So for those artisanal fishers that own a boat and they go out, for a day and come back and then sell their fish right away to the buyer who hands them off to the processor who then sells them to the someone else who puts them into fish sticks or whatever. There's many hands involved, right? Or is it just some giant ship that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, catches them, cleans them, and flash freezes them, and then ships them to some place somewhere else in the world, where we don't even get the benefit of the processing jobs, right? So it could go either way. Now, there has been a big push in the last 10 years or so to support artisanal fishers, people to have a fishing license, to use their fishing license. So things like, if you own a fishing license, you can't just lease out your fishing license and one guy collects them all up and then just buys a big ship and goes and fills all those quotas. I got 100 fishing licenses, I got 100 quotas to fill, I'll just get this one big mammoth ship done. Or they buy all the little boats and they just pay everyone a crappy little wage to go out there and risk their life and to fill those quotas. And they don't get any of the return on, when the fishing is good, right? They just get their salary. So there's rules against that now, that if you have, a fishing license for lobster or snow crab or, cod again, maybe, or haddock or whatever it is, you're the one that has to be on the boat catching those fish and bringing them in and selling them. And then you have at the same time this big movement towards community supported seafood, where people know, you buy the seafood, the people you bought it, who caught it, right? It's right there in the packaging. It's all traceable. You could say, I bought this cod from this guy named, Joe McLeod, who owns a 35-foot fiberglass fishing boat, and he runs it out of this town, and he caught this fish on this date. And that's happening. That's coming little by little. And if we support that, can you imagine? Can you imagine if we could support fishers like that, eh?
It would be awesome. And, I'm not sure what the mood's like right now when it comes to the anglers and commercial boats and commercial captains out on the East Coast. I don't know what they would prefer. If they would prefer more of an inshore fishery, or they'd like to get back out into the big water. And obviously there's ramifications of both. With inshore, there's a limit. If it's offshore, you've got everybody and their mother out there fishing. So it's a double-edged sword, and I'm not really sure where the anglers stand on it. I'm just sure that they're very appreciative of them opening it back up.
Yeah, there's associations and unions and all sorts of different interest groups involved with all this. And I don't pretend to know much about it. I went to the conference put on by Oceana Canada last February, and all those representatives were there, and the conference is all about, how do we make a sustainable fishery? Mm-hmm. And everyone's saying, there was lots and lots of discussion. But in the end, I said, this isn't an equality issue. It's not a governance issue. It's not a management issue. This is a technology issue. Yeah. Right? We got massive, incredible technology. Look, the Chinese have 6,500 fishing boats that can go around the world and catch fish year round. These boats leave home and don't come back for 2 years.
Okay, so I said months at a time. 2 years.
2 years. 2 years, and then the fish that they process is picked up by another boat, and then another boat drops off food for the hands on the ship, and more bait and equipment that they need. These 6,500 boats. A country like Canada or the United States might have 1,500 or maybe 1,000. So their fleet is 4 times bigger than their nearest competitor, and they definitely have the capacity to run, just wreak havoc on fish stocks. So they can go into an area of the ocean, and within 10 years, they basically reduce the population by 80 and 90%. So it's no longer lucrative for them to hang around anymore to catch the last 10%. They move on to the next unsuspecting stock of fish. Do we want that in Canada? Do we want that sort of thing happening in Canada again? This is the big question, right?
No. I mean, no, because at the end of the day, I don't want to go down the road of seeing commercial captains out of work again. So that's the biggest thing. And I think if you ever fool around with a man or woman's livelihood, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
And you should.
Oh yeah. And let's face it, it wasn't just offshore fishing boats. Yeah. You had a lot of incentive by government to for these inshore fishers to buy bigger boats, to buy seiners, to buy longliners, to upgrade from hand fishing, right? Just like what they used to do. What I did was just with a black line, a braided line, and a heavy, 15-ounce jig, and a couple hooks on the line above that, and just drop it down and jig, 300-400 feet down and haul up 2 or 3 cod if you're really lucky. And that's not what we're talking. These guys were incentivized to get all sorts of fancy equipment, new age equipment, and head off for 2 or 3 days at a time. So everyone had something to do with the collapse of the cod stock. It wasn't just, you can't just point your finger at one offshore boat. But when you have these draggers that just destroy everything in the path, including the bottom of the ocean, that's really what tipped the balance, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And here's a shameless plug. Talking about sustainable fisheries. I had the pleasure this weekend of enjoying. I love raw oysters. Love raw oysters. Yeah. I went to Seafood Depot. It's in Vaughan. I believe it's a franchise. There's other stores around Canada, but the only one that I'm aware of is the one in Vaughan. And you order, just in case anybody's in the Vaughan area. If you're interested in raw oysters, you like raw oysters like I do, it is the season. Make sure you call 48 hours ahead of time if you want them shucked to prepare your platter. It's very, very reasonable. I got a platter full of, I think, 30 oysters.
How much?
$40. $40
bucks.
Yeah,
That's not barely $1. That's just over $1 an oyster. That's crazy good.
it really is, and that's not a special. That's not a sale. They didn't know who I am. None of that. It was, you walk in, ask for Vanessa, who's working at the deli counter. She's extremely helpful, and you want to talk about shucking oysters. That woman, just get out of her way because you're going to get hurt.
I tell you, if you try shucking oysters, you think you got to pay me more than $1 an oyster because it's work. Your hands get all cut up, and it's tough. It's tough work,
But it is it's well worth every penny you spend. As I said, we were just blown away at the texture, the taste, and the quality of meat that we were getting. So Seafood Depot, thanks again for a great weekend. And it was, as I said, it was a bit of a treat. You don't get to see that all the time, but it's reasonable enough that perhaps maybe you could. And delicious, extremely nutritious. If you can stomach a raw oyster, I highly recommend eating them.
So do you chew them or just swallow them? Which are you?
I chew them. Obviously, it depends on the size of oyster that you get. I mean, if you're getting into the 3.5, 4, 5 inch oyster, you're probably not going to be able to swallow that whole. But I do like to chew. As I said, I enjoy the taste.
Me too. Yeah,
there's a certain taste in it. You put a little bit of Tabasco, a little bit of seafood dressing on it. I don't know.
I want it in my mouth. I want that. I want to be chewing that for a long time because I just love it. I mean, it tastes like you're eating the ocean, right? It's just so good. It's so good.
Jeremy, yes, 100%. Rockefeller. Mm-hmm. There's a few out there. There's so many different species of oyster that
recipes
and a lot of fun to enjoy. But I digress. Sorry, Lawrence, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, just to leave that before we head off from the East Coast, we'll be circling back around another story, but there was an audit released by the Environmental Commissioner saying that the Department of Fisheries and Ocean is doing a bad job tracking what fish is being caught in real time, reporting that properly. They don't have the tools, they don't have the capacity to really count what fish are being caught by who, when, and where. And, they have maybe 30% of the commercial fisheries that are controlled by DFO are managed where they understand the stock size and how much fishing pressure those fisheries can take. The other 70%, they're still working on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and do they have a timeline of when they'll know?
Well, they have to do the science, and that can take 2 to 3 years. And but they did announce that last February that they were launching 50 more fishing stocks were being launched to determine sustainability quotas and such. So they're working hard to catch up, But they got some progress to make. Whereas in the United States, not one fish stock has entered the endangered list, and they have over 50 fish stocks that are being fished sustainably in the United States, and they're adding new ones to the list every year and not taking any off and putting them on the endangered list. So they're moving forward. We're moving forward. We're just catching up. That's all. But we are moving forward, and that's the good news.
That is good news. Great news.
Yeah. Okay.
We got good news. More good news, Lawrence.
Let me look. Oh, here's something interesting. So fishing groups are suing 13 tire manufacturers for the compound they use, the preservative they use in the rubber tires. Now, these rubber tires, they've been using this for 60 years when they make tires, but the tires rub down on the roads, right? They wear down. They create little rubber dust particles that they're just left on the road. And then it rains and all that dust and rainwater washes into the storm drains and goes into the creeks. Turns out this crap is highly toxic to salmon and steelhead.
Okay, where's the good news in this story?
Someone's being held to account. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Here I am on the edge of my seat waiting for something good to come out of this.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's awful.
But you know what? This was discovered. I first read about this about 2 years ago. So the fact that we've got these fishing organizations, man, kicking butt, suing these tire manufacturers saying, you guys should know about this. You should know, and you should find something else that's not toxic to make your super tires with. So maybe this is the beginning of the end, right? Turn it around.
Well, I would have to say at this stage, it almost needs to end. I mean, if it were a fight, they'd stop it. in terms of the amount of plastic that's out there and in our environment, in our fish, in the fatty tissue, in our livers. I mean, it's being found everywhere. And do we know exactly what the health ramifications are from all this plastic? No, but we're going to find out sooner than later, whether we like it or not.
Here's another story about a fishing group on the ball. The Atlantic Salmon Federation has detected the escapement of Atlantic salmon from a fish farm in southern New Brunswick. And these fish, the escaped fish, are heading up the river at a counting inspection station where they're lifted up over the river, so they have a chance to see, which fish are coming up and who owns them, and if they're hatchery or wild. Well, these big gold pig fish, the special DNA breed that they use in the farms, they're showing up. They're showing up and heading up the river to spawn with the other wild fish, and but people are freaking out. Like how come no one reported this fish loss? So now they're saying, it turns out 3 of the cages were damaged by seals. The seals try to get into the cages to get a free snack, and then the fish escape. So there's this is a big problem, right? This is a problem around the world that the fin fish industry is dealing with. There was another case over in Norway right now of 30,000 escaped Atlantic salmon out of one of their lease areas, and when these fish successfully spawn with wild fish, you're going to get bigger, stupid, faster growing, dumb, lazy fish, because that's what they want in the pens. They don't want the active ones, not the jumpers. They want the lazy, sit around on the couch fish, and they're just interested in eating and getting big. So it's not necessarily a recipe for survival, right? This is a recipe for us to eat big fish, and it's gonna, it's a problem.
It is a problem, and the more we mess with genetics and the DNA strains, all bets are off in regards to what kind of fish we're going to have in the future. But it disappoints me. I guess it shouldn't surprise me that these pens are ripped apart by sea lions or various other sharks, mammals, what have you. People that are animals that are hungry. Let's just say that.
It's right there. It's right there on the other side of that net,
And they integrate into the wild. Oh man, it's that's a recipe for disaster.
I remember.
We got time for one more.
All right. Well, here's more bad news. I'm sorry. The second snow crab season in a row in the Bering Sea is canceled. They now know 1.2 billion snow crab died from in the last 3 years due to warming ocean waters up in the Arctic, and causing the food source of these snow crabs to perish, and they all starve to death. So for the second year in a row, the snow crab season has been canceled. And that just shows you, at the same time, though, salmon are moving north. So there's now chum salmon in the Arctic Ocean, and being detected, migrating up the Mackenzie River. So can you imagine, like, salmon are moving up, man. They're taking advantage of all this, these beautiful, pristine rivers up there, and where there's never been, salmon before. And they're saying, it's doable now. Like, these rivers are staying open longer, opening sooner, and they can support life. So, take from one hand and give us with the other, maybe, but it's not all bad news.
No, but to those crab captains that are, paying for boats and trying to make ends meet, this is the second year, and you see the totals. I mean, if you've ever watched Deadliest Catch, you see the amount of money that these boats are able to generate. You're taking that out of the equation. Like, I don't know how they survive. I don't know how they've managed to get through a year, let alone another year on top of this.
Yeah, can you imagine?
I honestly can't. Like, I mean, are we going to be seeing riots at the docks soon? Like, I don't know how you can be out of work for 2 years. I just don't know how anyone does that, never mind a captain.
Boats tied up, seized by the banks, and just tied up at the dock, and the bank's trying to figure out what to do with them. And people lose their livelihoods, lose their, forced into bankruptcy. And a lot of these people, when you sign a loan like that, you also have to indemnify the loan. They're not just going to say, "Oh, you're a businessman or businesswoman," and if you go bust, you lose your business, but you can keep all your toys. No, the banks say, "No, you gotta put your own signature on that loan form as well, and indemnify, so that if they have to call on that loan, they're going to be coming after you as well. And so that means as the individual, you put everything you have and own on the line for that business, because it's going to be taken away from you if it goes down.
And Bill makes a comment here, and yeah, change to gold miners, as we've seen with some captains. But sometimes this is I don't want to say it to be degrading, but sometimes this is all they know. And when I say this is all they know, they have spent their entire life on the water, learning, this little facet, that little nuance. Like, I mean, there's so much knowledge to our fisheries and the migration of fish and crustaceans. It's all going to be lost.
It's all going to be lost, man. And you lose one generation, and it's over. And then where are we going to get our seafood from, right? Like, we're the ones that incentivize these people to take these big chances, because we buy the seafood, and that's how it works, right? That's how it works. And then things happen, and we'll just switch to a different seafood or a different source of snow crab from some other part of the world. But these guys, to move their boats across to the other side of Canada and find a license over there, good luck. You're not going to get a license in Atlantic Canada. Those licenses have all been handed out, and no one's handing out more of them. Yeah,
no kidding. Oh man.
Yeah.
Lawrence, can we finish on a high note? Is there any good news in that?
Okay. Ontario's experimental lakes, right? This is just amazing. And who knows about these experimental lakes up in northwestern Ontario? 100 lakes, beautiful, pristine lakes. They'll drop in a smidge of salt, and they'll examine it over the next few years to see if that little smidge made a difference. Or they'll dump it, a little smidge of this or a smidge of plastic, and they'll see if it shows up in the fish. Nothing catastrophic, right? We're talking very, very carefully controlled experiments happening over long periods of time in very sort of controlled environments, and it's our lakes. And the science that's coming out of that is telling us, hey, we got to do that different. We got to do that different. And you got to stop doing that. This is just amazing stuff. These lakes were going to get shut down at some point. They were on the chopping block by a previous government. Then the federal government stepped in with a bucket of money and kept them going. And then the provincial government turned around and put money back into it. So, we've got this, and it's just, we are the, supporting the science that's going to keep our fisheries and our lakes, and not just commercial for sure, but even our recreational fisheries going strong. So this is, I'm going to get more information on this. And if you guys have some links you want to share with me, someone I should reach out to and talk to, please do introduce me. I'd very much appreciate that.
That's awesome, dude. Well, on that note, as I said, it's always a pleasure to have you here every Monday. We look forward to all your new segments, because there's certain things that we thought we knew, maybe we thought we didn't know, and after you're done, we all know now. And we thank you so much for that, Lawrence, and everything that you bring to our show. We look forward to seeing you. Bluefish Canada, for those who don't know the link, please head over to Bluefish Canada for a whole whack of resources. And if you've missed this podcast or any others, you can hear it on Bluefish Radio. Lawrence,
thanks, Scotty.
A great week. Are you going to be down at the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show?
I've got a whole weekend planned, and it involves my mother's birthday on Saturday. So that's my, I'm not going to be spending a bucket of money on ice fishing stuff that probably don't need anyways, but I'm going to be spending time with my mom, and she ain't getting any younger. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Always important to spend time with Mom. Lawrence, you have fun with Mom. Say hi to Mom. Give Mom a hug for us.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
We'll see you next week, my friend.
All right. Be well.
Jason Barnews, right after a word from his sponsor.
The fear of failure is failure itself. The world of science rewards the ones who are willing to try and fail. Because without the courage to embrace failure, ideas remain ideas. But with that courage to fail and to learn, ideas can change the world.
Mr. Jay Barnews, how are you, sir?
Good, man. How are you, Scotty?
Living the dream, as they always say, Jay.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume you're heading down to the Ultimate Fishing Show.
Yeah, I'll be there on Saturday just for one day. And
Are you doing a presentation at all? Are you doing any guest speaking?
Hanging out this year, man. Just hanging out. So, yeah,
Nice.
I could only go the one day, and because I got equipment on a Sunday. So when I was told one day wasn't enough, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go for the day and hang out. So that's all. And Trevor's gonna be we'll be hanging around probably the Lake Simcoe Power Box booth with Enzo.
Nice.
So,
and
yeah.
I'm so glad you put up some comments here, some links that I forgot to mention, but I'm glad you reminded me. Lake Simcoe Power Box has, where is it, Jay? I'm looking back in the archives.
Yeah, they got I'll share it again, man. So
there it is right there.
You got it? Yeah. So there I just did it today. There's a few companies and individuals out there with promotion codes, and so Lake Simcoe Power Box is one. So if you go to the link in my comment, just look up Ultimate Ice Fishing Show Ontario, and it'll take you to it. Click on the tickets link, promo code Powerbox, and then do your transaction, and then your $10 ticket's only $8. You save $2. So, and you can, from what I understand, you can skip the line. You just scan your ticket and you go. So, yeah, so that's easy way to save a couple bucks. Parking's free at the International Center. Doors open at 9 on Saturday. If you're looking for stuff, take my advice. If you're looking for ice fishing gear, try and get there early on Saturday. It was busy last year when the doors opened, and then it died out after a bit. But a lot of these vendors have limited ice fishing stock, and I suggest if you're looking for a new lure, some new line, a new reel, new rod specifically, get there early. So that's my suggestion.
Right on. And is there anything in particular, Jay, that you're looking forward to seeing or you need more of?
I don't need anything, but I'm always a big fan of last year, like JB's Fishing Depot. I think they're back this year. They had a great assortment of some of the small, like Clam makes some really small ice lures. And I'm hoping that they'll have some of them. Like these are little jig and spoons stuff. I don't want to, I forget. You know what? I don't know what they're called. I just have them in my mind what they are, but we're talking stuff that's in the 1/32, 1/16 ounce size. That's hard to find. That's what I'll be looking for. Spade baits. Yeah. So there's some really new cool ice baits coming out from different companies. So I suggest getting down there. Last year, if you're looking for a good ice suit, Striker ice suit, which I have, some of the companies I think it's tackledepot.ca. They had a booth there last year, pushing lots of Striker stuff. True North Baits is going to be there. Yeah, and also Lake Simcoe Power Box. So like, I don't know, man. I love Enzo and what he does with those power boxes. Like we use it all the time, kayak fishing, camping. Dude, we go road tripping. If anyone has kids and you got to charge your electronics, stick this thing between the seats and the back of the vehicle, and you got happy kids the whole trip. You keep your stuff charged up. I love it. I keep one in the van like all the time. So super handy. Trying to think of what else is going to be there. Radio World's got some promos running. They're going to be there.
Nice.
Yeah, lots of. Geez, I'm trying to think who else. Sci-Flies, I saw is going to be there. So, and there's the usual suspects like Big Jim will be walking around causing problems, calling security. Yeah, I just look forward to the speakers. I look forward to. That's part of the reason why I'm happy I can only go the one day is I'm going to go and listen to a lot of the great seminars. And if anyone is into ice fishing and you want to learn, go to the seminars. Gord will be there. He's doing seminars with his grandson, Liam. Liam's been doing some great stuff with Normart Canada as part of his education. He's been doing an internship there, I believe. So he'll be there. Ask Ray will be there. Dave Chong, of course, getting caught up on some perch tactics for Lake Simcoe, which I love fishing Lake Simcoe, but I don't fish it nearly as much as Dave.
No,
I get up there a few times a year, so any little bit of information I can get to help me catch more of those jumbos on Lake Simcoe. I'm not after numbers. I'm always after size out there. I love the biggest ones I can get. So just go down there. I think the seminars alone are worth the price of admission, let alone great deals. So
100%. Yeah, I would say only a bird of prey fishes Lake Simcoe more than Dave Chong. But it's always nice to see what Dave's up to, and of course what he's hooking into. We live vicariously through folks like him, like you, like Trevor, and everyone else that was mentioned above. Jay, one thing that I did want to bring to your segment, and I think you are definitely the best person to help us out with this. A lot of folks, whether they want to admit it or not, and this isn't here to shame anybody, it's all about fish identification. Now, I will say this. We're going to start with the trout species tonight.
Yeah.
And I want to thank D Laps is the YouTube channel that I got this off of. It hasn't got many subscribers. I think he's only got like 100 or 150 subscribers. Please go over and subscribe to his channels because he's got some interesting stuff there. But he does a really good job. Now, whether he's assisted to the full extent from the Alberta, whatever resource it is that he mentions in the video, and I'll let him do that. But when it comes to trout, I want you to jump in and just tell us something that's maybe unique to maybe Ontario rainbow, brook trout, what have you. But needless to say, let's start with D-Laps, and we'll start with the first trout, and then we'll get Jay's comment and feedback. All right. I'm sorry. It's a shared screen.
Today, I want to teach you how to identify the different types of trout across Canada. I'll be using albertafishingguide.com today as my main reference for a lot of the information in this video. I've put a link down in the description so you can go check it out for yourself. There's a lot of really great information on a lot of different types of fish. It's definitely a really good resource and a really good guide, something that I refer back to quite often. First, we'll look at the brook trout. Brook trout are also often referred to as speckled trout. They're native to eastern North America, but they've been introduced elsewhere across Canada. They can be identified by a distinct marble pattern on their body, a white leading edge on their bottom fins, no black or brown spots on their head, and by distinct sprinkling of red dots across their body. Next up is the brown trout.
Okay, before we get to the brown trout, Jay, is there anything else that we should talk about when it comes to our brook trout?
I think let's talk about broadly what we're looking at here. So I think what a lot of people forget when it comes to trout and salmon in let's just say in Canada, across Canada at this point. Let's look at the brook trout. White leading edge on those fins, right? So you got the pelvic fin, the pectoral fin, and the anal fin. Those white leading edges are typical of only one group of fish, and that's the char. So brook trout, Arctic char, and lake trout are all char species, and only they have those white leading edges on those fins. If you see, now we could talk about splake, but that's a cross, so we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, so if you're looking at a salmonid, so it's got that adipose fin on the back, and it's got white leading edges on the fins, it's going to be a char. And then what you're going to look at for your brook trout is you have that square tail on a brook trout versus a forked tail on a lake trout. So those are going to be the main ones. And I think that a lot of folks forget that. In fact, if you really want to get nerdy, Scotty, there's biologists out there who will not call a brook trout. They will call it a brook char. And, always up for a debate on that. But anyways, I think that's important to remember when you're looking at brook trout is those white leading edges on the fins. That's really the first key. And then the other patternings that the author discussed are true to form, exactly how he said it.
Sonia has an interesting question here, and I would suggest that the answer would be no. Do they really need the adipose fin, Jay?
No, they don't need the adipose fin. It's not a feature that they use, and in fact, it's quite often that's the fin that's clipped when you are catching them in the wild. And it's important to note adipose fins because when you're, this is my own professional and personal belief, when it comes to keeping and maintaining healthy fish populations in Ontario, especially, we rely on wild produced fish. And wild produced fish have good genetics, and they will produce more fish with good genetics. Stock fish, hatchery raised fish, aren't as good genetically, but they help fill a niche that's needed, right? And quite often you'll see, and this happens a lot with steelhead, you'll see the clipped adipose fin as a marker. So if you're going to keep a steelhead, my message is to you, or a lot of trout for that matter, try and do one with a clipped adipose fin, because then you're not taking from wild populations, and you still get to enjoy the fish that you get to take home as your privilege as a license holding angler.
One other thing too that we found out through the CFN fish off that I didn't know, and a few of us didn't know, those dots are very unique to each fish, similar to that of the fingerprint for a human. That dot, those dots and how they show up on a fish is different for every fish, and it is unique to that fish. As I said, similar to that of a fingerprint, which I didn't know. I had no idea.
And yeah, it's, you got to be really careful about that, but it does. I 100% agree, Scotty. And I know that through the fish off, helping with some of the validations of fish species and fish specimens, that the fish dots has been so important for that. And the dotting pattern too, which I'm sure we'll get into, but when we get into, if we get into Great Lakes fish and Great Lakes salmonids, where those spots are in relation to the lateral line and in relation to on the tail of the fish, the caudal fin, that will help us identify them. So
what's unique about that? Because to be honest with you, Jay, this is as far as we go with the brook trout. Where do you see those spots say show up if it is a large water body dwelling fish as opposed to inland?
So no, actually, so for brook trout it stays the same, but if we get into the Great Lakes proper, so it is a challenge though, because, and I think this is where people struggle, because you can get a sea run brook trout that is almost silver, right? So in Labrador, in Newfoundland, actually any of the oceans, you can get sea run brook trout on the East Coast or on the Arctic coast, so Hudson Bay. You will get sea run brook trout, and they are almost silver when they come into the tributaries to spawn. So they live in the marine environment instead of lake environment, and they're almost silver when they come in, and they don't change their color. Like what we're looking at here is a spawning male brook trout, which is honestly for brook trout is a really unique looking fish. They're not always this red or this vibrant in color. Immature fish, non-breeding fish, they won't get this colored up. What we're looking for, so I guess what I'm trying to say is for anglers, don't think that every brook trout should have bright red fins and a bright red belly like that and ultra green back and those markings on the back. You'll hear them called vermiculations. Like they're really pronounced on this fish. This is what I call like the specimen, like a museum specimen photograph of the prime specimen. Reality is though, a lot of the specimens we look at are not prime specimens. They're like you and me, Scotty. We're not prime specimens. We're still humans, but they're not going to stick us in a museum somewhere up, to show us off to the world as being the best examples of our species, right?
I sure hope not.
I hope not.
I'm kind of banking on that, Jay. All right, moving right along from brook trout, we get into
by distinct sprinkling of red dots across their body. Next up is the brown trout. Brown trout are actually native to Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. They were only first introduced to Canada in the late 1800s when they were brought to Newfoundland from a hatchery in Scotland. Now they are found in every province across Canada except for the Yukon and Northwest Territories. Brown trout can be identified by their dark black spots down their backside, few to no spots on their tail, and red spots with pale halos around them. Next up is the provincial.
All right. So before we get to the next
Yeah.
fish, let's talk about brown trout, because I will say this. I have been confused several times when it comes to this fish. It seems to be colored differently. It appears different in different bodies of water. Would you consider this a museum-like pictition or depiction of a brown trout?
I would say yes, but let's look at what makes a brown trout a brown trout. So now, one thing that's not mentioned here, and because I always think about when I teach fish identification to colleagues, be it students, other biologists, we have to think about what it is not. So when I'm looking at a fish, if I catch a fish out in the wild, I don't automatically go to what it is. I want to figure out what it's not, and then by elimination, I get to what it is. So I'm looking at this fish, and right away, I don't see any white leading edges on the fins. It's not a char. Okay, so we're getting down to probably either a brown trout, a brown trout, Atlantic salmon could be. And I'm looking at this fish, and there's two things on this fish that tells me it's a brown trout that aren't mentioned in the list. Those items there are important, but these two characters I'm going to tell you are also really important. Number one is the adipose fin on this fish. The adipose fin on a brown trout is almost always orange. And the smaller the brown trout, usually the more orange it is. When you catch a juvenile brown trout, like a creek-sized brown trout that's in that sort of, let's say, the CFN class, right? 8 inches, 10 inches, 14 inches. The adipose fin is usually bright orange, as bright as can be. The other character that's important here, though, is let's think about its cousin, the Atlantic salmon, Scotty. Atlantic salmon is in the same genus. So Salmo truta is the brown trout. Salmo salar is Atlantic salmon. Same genus, very, very similar fish. We're going to look, though, at the mouth. And if you draw a line from the eye, this is like the smallmouth bass thing. You draw a line down from the eye, straight down. And you're going to see that the mouth on this fish extends well past the eye, meaning it has a large mouth. Very typical of a brown trout. What you'll see with Atlantic salmon is that mouth is small. It does not extend past the eye. That is so important. I get sent so many photos of Atlantics and browns, and that's one of the first things I look for, because if we get a picture of a brown trout or an Atlantic salmon from Lake Ontario, which is usually where I'm seeing pictures from, an angler's catching it, and they're kind of silvery colored because they caught them right out of the lake. Even the browns out of Lake Ontario, like, I think they're beautiful, man. They come out bright silver in the summertime, right? They don't have those, like, even the females will get kind of a bright orange color. The males, they go crazy with their kypes and everything else, but with brown trout, it's that mouth size that's so important. Even the small brown trout will have a bigger mouth on them. And why do they have a bigger mouth? They're predators. Brown trout are piscivorous fish. And most of the streams, this is where they've caused problems, is brown trout in our streams aren't native. And when they've been introduced, they can not decimate, I'm going to say, local fish populations. In some cases, probably yes, but in a lot of cases, they become a major predator, and they can really, really knock down a local fish population once they get in. Because of that, they are a predator, and that's what their mouths are designed to do, is to have a large opening to catch large prey.
Great. I tell you, I hope all of you are appreciating this, because I know I am. Sonia, what you had issues with was exactly what I had issues with. The Atlantics and the Browns, I would always get mixed up. And if it wasn't for Kenneth and a few other judges that were able to, steer me in the right direction, the mouth is what they mentioned. And of course, the adipose. But when it comes to brown trout, as Jay has mentioned, you will get different variations pretty much all over Canada. And I would say most of the world. Ed McKenzie brings up the German browns. If you've ever seen a German brown, beautiful, beautiful looking fish. They are unique, I think, Jay, anyway, to Europe. You don't see them over on our side of the pond. So very unique fish, but nonetheless, very, very beautiful. And I had no idea how voracious they were. They're very much like a lake trout. You don't want to put them with any other fish. They are very dominant when it comes to territories. All right, moving right along. I believe we're going to get into some fish that are more native to out west.
Next up is the provincial fish of Alberta, the bull trout. Bull trout are native to cold, clear waters in Western North America. They can be found in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, British Columbia, and in Alberta. In Alberta, bull trout are listed as a threatened species, and it's strictly prohibited to keep any bull trout if you catch them fishing. Their numbers have been greatly impacted by habitat loss due to dams and barriers and the introduction of new species that compete for space and resources. Bull trout are highly sensitive to changes in temperature and water quality as well. The main identifying features of a bull trout is that they do not have black spots on their dorsal fin. If you fish in Alberta, you should be familiar with the phrase, "no black, put it back." Bull trout also have a very large head and mouth. Their fins have white leading edges. They have pale yellow or cream colored spots. And they have a dark olive green back.
Now, what's interesting to me, Jay, is this is not considered a hybrid species. This is still a natural species. That's amazing to me. And obviously, as we have seen with certain water qualities and the changes in water quality, we're starting to phase these fish out. Were they ever at all native to any waters out this way, or has it strictly been out west?
Strictly been out west. Now you will see genetically they're very similar, and there's actually differences of opinion on this with Dolly Varden and bull trout. Bull trout are typically found on the east side of on the eastern slope, so flowing east, and Dolly Varden are on the west. That's what you'll find a lot of, and I'm not an expert on bull trout or Dolly Varden. They're not in my sort of jurisdiction, but that's typically what you're going to see. And this gets back, this picture here is a great step back to what I was talking about, process of elimination, meaning, okay, let's look at this fish. We have white leading edges. So that takes us to our char family, back in the char family. And I'm going to look at this fish and go, okay, it has what do I want to differentiate it from? Well, we did talk about no black spots or black spots. It says here, no black spots on dorsal fin. Brook trout have black spots on the dorsal fin. Okay. If we think back to that picture of that male brook trout that we had, there are black spots. They're more black vermiculations. Okay. No black spots. Black spots on the brook trout. No black spots on the bull trout. What you could confuse it with is a lake trout. Maybe there are some other characters, but what lake trout have is a forked tail. Bull trout have a square tail. So it's just by elimination, you're basically down to a bull trout. Now their mouths are a bit bigger than in terms of how far back they extend past that eye. They are typically bigger than a brook trout as well. You can catch them with brook trout. You can catch them in the same waters, but because bull trout are so predatory, typically they'll outcompete the brook trout, and you're gonna, in a watershed, you'll see the brook trout and the bull trout separate from each other typically. So
one analogy, or at least something that was explained to me, made me sort of think that there's a lot of similarities between a bull trout and a lake trout when it comes to how protective they are, how voracious they are. Certainly, if you look at the head of a bull trout, very similar to that of a lake trout. My question is this: with the water qualities having an issue with their longevity and their existence, could it be possible to put bull trout in a deep, cold glacier type lake?
I'm going to say it's possible. So bull trout, the only bull trout I'm aware of are they're riverine species. All the discussions I've read and research I've read on bull trout is they're very much a riverine species. And what protects bull trout is they are rare. And in fact, I see Corey mentioned some of his comments here. They're protected in many places. And I know in southern Alberta, I've seen bull trout in Waterton National Park, which butts up against Glacier National Park. So they're doing bull trout studies in those places. But I think bull trout are doing okay because typically a lot of the places where they are at risk, it's also within protected areas, Scotty. So I think that bull trout are doing okay. And also we have to be careful because lake trout are kind of a pain in the neck in some of these areas. You know, you hear about work being done in some of the national parks in the U.S. where they're trying to eradicate lake trout because lake trout, once they get into these systems, they just take over. They're very high functioning predator fish, and they really outcompete. And I would guess they probably outcompete bull trout as well. So, yeah.
Good stuff. We will continue. I see your question, Ed. We'll get to that after we talk about lake trout. But moving right along, I believe it's cutthroat that's up next.
The next fish on the list is the cutthroat trout. Cutthroat trout are native to Western North America and have over time evolved through geographic isolation into 14 different subspecies, each native to different drainage basins. West Slope cutthroat trout, one of these subspecies, are a native fish in Alberta and have emerged from the South Saskatchewan and Bow River drainages. Pure genetic strain cutthroat are also found in southern Alberta headwaters and are classed as a threatened species, as they have been pushed out of 75% of their range by other introduced species and by poor water quality. The main identifying feature on a cutthroat trout is its slash of red on the lower jaw. This is where the name cutthroat comes from. They also have greenish backs with yellow or silver sides, black spots mostly concentrated above the lateral line, except for near the tail, and they have a slightly forked, spotted tail fin. Next.
So, having said that, obviously they're not native over here. We would never see them unless we went west. There's been, when it comes to the number of fish that are submitted in the fish off, it is a good thing that they have that distinctive feature on their basically their gill plate or whatever you want, lower jaw. Because that fish I could see being misunderstood as or misidentified as a brown trout, possibly even a rainbow trout. But you saw the pictures that the gentleman sent to us, and of course the ones that are live, neither one of them look at all similar. So I could see this being misidentified quite often.
Yeah. So the closest relative to the cutthroat trout that we're familiar with is the rainbow trout. You know, when you look at, if you look at a taxonomic, it's called a cladogram or clade. So you'll have these lines and you'll have these, it's genetically, you'll see these lines of association. And there's one, I'll actually post a link to it, Scotty, in the chat so folks can take a look at it. Now, I apologize, the resolution isn't great if I can find the chat. But the resolution isn't great, but what it shows is who's related to who in the salmon and trout world. And so cutthroat trout and rainbow trout are fairly closely related. Now, when we think about cutthroats, you know, it was talking about on the west slope. So we have cutthroats in different parts of the Rockies. There's different, and even this gentleman mentions there's 14 different strains of cutthroat. And that's how that's happened is, and with rainbows too, like there's even there's a species called the Athabasca rainbow as one example, which is a very spotted rainbow trout. It has a lot of spots on it. The Athabasca River flows north into the Arctic from the mountains. All these fish have evolved over time. And to be very blunt about it, what you're seeing is, Scotty, is these fish there's certain areas of the mountains where they can get access to, and they're separate from each other over time, much like glaciers separated fish for thousands of years in our part of the continent. With the Rockies, you have, when the mountains rose up, they actually divided watersheds, and these fish became isolated. And that's how you're getting, and more or less how you're getting some of these unique strains, is they were isolated thousands of years ago, and these fish have evolved on their own. And so more or less a cutthroat is, and a rainbow trout are very similar compared to their other cousins. And their cousins are, and I'm talking about cousins. So with cutthroat and rainbows, their cousins are the other Ornithorhynchus genus. They're in the genus Ornithorhynchus, which is the same genus as Chinooks, cohos, pinks, and all the other Pacific salmons that we're familiar with. So rainbow trout and cutthroat trout are closer related to a Chinook salmon and a coho salmon than they are to a brown trout, a brook trout, a lake trout, etc. They are quite far away from those other trouts. So don't get confused with the name trout. They are more closely related to Pacific salmon than they are to the typical trout.
Folks, just so you know, because Jay can attest to this, I didn't even tell him what we were talking about tonight. Okay, it's not like he had time to prepare. This is all off the cuff.
I'm winging it,
buddy. But you're doing a fantastic job. And again, I can't thank these three enough for coming with what they do come with. And Jay is just he takes it to another extreme when it comes to this. But I knew folks would find this interesting, and especially for our CFN fish offers, who sometimes want to target out of province fish, like a bucket list, like a cutthroat or maybe a bull trout. And if they ever do, you've just helped them identify it. So, Jay, that's awesome. But moving right along, I believe lake trout is next.
Next up is the lake trout. Lake trout are native to only the northern parts of North America. They live mainly in lakes and require cold, oxygen-rich water to survive. They have been widely introduced into non-native waters across North America as well. Lake trout can be identified mainly due to their light green or gray color. They also have lighter colored spots and a deeply forked tail. The last fish on the list for today is the rainbow trout.
Let's get back to that. Hold on.
Rainbow trout waters across the
Let's get back.
They also have lighter colored spots.
Okay, so lake trout. This is a fish that, let's face it, is pretty much across the country. I don't know if there's a province that does not have lake trout in it. But having said that, they are all native and unique to their bodies of water. Case in point, you go to Tazen Lake, and the owners of Tazen Lake are convinced that there's at least 2, possibly 3 strains of lake trout within Tazen Lake. I'd say Elmer would suggest that there's probably 2, and so on and so on. What are some of the unique features of a lake trout that we can all identify with, Jay, and anything that's over and above that you can explain as unique subspecies?
So I'm going to throw another link in the chat that I think is going to, if for the folks that are able to access the links, I'm going to call this one Lake Trout Morse. And it's a link to a JPEG image, and you're getting an inside scoop here on this. So this is a publication that was published by colleagues of friends of mine who looked at, and this has been done by a few great researchers out there. And what they do is they actually take a fish, and they actually, and I know the image you're going to look at is all these different shapes of lake trout shapes. And what they did was they actually quantified those shapes and looked at what shapes are closer related to different shapes. And what they found was that across Canada, there's certain areas where certain shapes of lake trout are more dominant than others. And also too, Scotty, within a certain lake, you will get different shapes. And what I think the proper term is proper morphs. So it's a morphology difference. So you have lake trouts that are short and fat. You have lake trouts long and skinny. You have lake trout in the same lake that are river spawners, that are lake spawners, fall spawners, winter spawners. What's happened with lake trout, and I talked about this with rainbow trout and cutthroat trout in their mountain environments where they became isolated over geologic time. What happens with lake trout is they also became isolated over geologic time, but in lakes. So these lakes at one point, like we're talking back in the glaciated period. So, and we're talking as far south as, I'm going to say, Algonquin Park, and Algonquin Park up to, we're talking Great Slave Lake, Lake Athabasca. Like the glaciers impacted all those areas. People may not realize this, but there was a major glacial flow of water that at one time connected Parry Sound to the mouth of the French River and the Ottawa. There was a glacial flow through there. And there's a whole bunch of lakes along the middle of Algonquin Park that have unique lake trout in them because of those flows. And they're nowhere else. In fact, there's a strain of lake trout. Oh, I forget the name offhand. This is where it's good to prepare. There's a couple lakes, like there's a lake in the southern panhandle of Algonquin that has silver lake trout. They don't even have the markings, like the spots. They're just straight like a silver, almost like a mirror carp, Scotty. But a mirror carp is not the same because it's scales. But this fish still has scales, but it's almost a silver. It's called the king's coat. King's coat it's spelled kings, Kings, and then coat, Cote. King's coat lake trout is a unique strain of lake trout in only 1 or 2 lakes in the panhandle of Algonquin. And you'll see this across the lake trout's range. All these lakes and the large lakes like Athabasca, Great Slave have huge diversity in lake trout morphs within the same lake. It's really, really incredible. And if anyone's a nature nut and you've ever grown up watching like David Attenborough films and you've read up, like remember the Galapagos Islands and islands, you had the tortoises were different shapes on different islands, right? The shells were different shapes. The finches were different on different islands, and the finches evolved with different body styles and tools and stuff. This is the same thing, but at a fish level with lake trout. What's cool about lake trout is that with rainbows, they've kind of separated into different species, but with lake trout, genetically, they're still lake trout. They're just in these different morphs based on, and I think some of it has to do with not just where they're spawning, but also where are they in the lake? There's shallow feeding lake trout. There's deep feeding lake trout. There's lake trout in some lakes that pretty much feed on invertebrates that grow, to about maximum size of this. And then you have the 60 pounders that were, the 80 pounders in Athabasca. And some of it's food, but some of it's genetics across geologic time.
Interesting. When it comes to stocking, and we've done a lot of it here in the province of Ontario, is there a species of lake trout that is more often used than another?
If you know what, I'm sure there is, but I don't know offhand what that would be. So, I don't know. I'm going to guess. I would guess it's some sort of southern strain, because most of the stocking that we see go on with lake trout is, Scotty, it's in that sort of north of the Kawartha Lakes, but not south of Algonquin, but probably almost south of the North Channel, I guess, because once you get above that area, a lot of those lakes are naturally sustaining and they're remote. They don't get the pressure that we're getting in those areas. Basically, anywhere off the Trans-Canada gets a lot of pressure, right? So it's probably a southern strain that M&R has worked with local hatcheries to develop to be more suitable for our southern climate. And it's not that it's a warm climate, it's just warmer than further north lake trout will have to deal with. So,
well, for a guy that doesn't know the exact answer, buddy, you've hit the nail on the head. I wouldn't question what you just said. It makes perfect sense to me. Now, I will say this last but not least. I know there are a lot of other trout species, one of which that Ed has asked about the Aurora, but here it is. This is the last one. I think this is not unique at all when it comes to across Canada. I don't know of a province that doesn't have the rainbow trout in it, but I bet you if there is one, Jay's gonna tell us right after this.
Spots and a deeply forked tail. The last fish on the list for today is the rainbow trout. Rainbow trout are native to cold water tributaries of the Pacific Ocean in Asia and North America. However, due to its popularity as a sporting fish, rainbow trout have been introduced to bodies of water all over the world. The main identifying feature of a rainbow trout is the reddish stripe along its sides. They are also normally darker on top, and they have many black spots across their body. Thanks for watching. I hope that this video is talking about how to identify the different.
Thanks so much for giving us
also normally
a topic to talk about. I do love his resource. It is simple, straightforward, but at the end of the day, it's great for some of us who know a little bit about the char species and the rest of the trout family, and maybe wanted to know a little bit more. But tell us some features that are unique in your eyes, the rainbow trout of Canada.
So, where we're going to catch rainbow trout, we have to be worried about what we're going to mix it up with. And so, if we get away from, so I think he is accurate on his points about the reddish stripe, but the reddish stripe isn't always pronounced. Darker on top, yes. Black spots, yes. But the trouble with rainbow trout is that it looks like everything else. It has characteristics of the other species, and to be accurate with it, we have to think about a little more precisely what you're going to deal with. So, and with this particular gentleman, he is discussing fish in Alberta, and so he doesn't have to worry about Chinook salmon, coho salmon, pink salmon. We do for a lot of Canadian populations, both in the Great Lakes, anyone in the Great Lakes, even the St. Lawrence. These are all fish you have to deal with, Scotty. One thing I'm going to point out here is the adipose fin on this fish. On smaller fish, typically what you're going to see is there's differences in the adipose fin. On a rainbow trout, the adipose fin has a black line all the way around it. This is on smaller fish. So if you're in a creek and you're catching like maybe fish up to 10, 12 inches long, okay, has a dark line all the way around it. A coho, you take that dark line all the way around and you put a little what's called a window. It doesn't quite close on it. And then if it's a Chinook, it's almost clear. There's almost no dark line at all. So those are three characteristics. Remember, rainbow trout is closest related to Chinooks and cohos as opposed to the other trouts that we're talking about. The other characteristic I'm gonna mention with these guys, Scotty, is, and this is the most important trait when you're going to talk about rainbow trout versus cohos versus Chinooks, is that one, rainbow trout will have spots along its entire tail. Okay. So for those of us in the Great Lakes and on the West Coast, you're going to look for spots across the entire tail. And then you want to look at its anal fin. The anal fin on a rainbow trout is very square, and I'm going to try and explain that with this picture. There's where the letter C is, that's the front leading edge of the fin. Okay, you have that front edge. That front edge is the same length as the other side. Think of it as a triangle. Okay, so the fin is almost like equal sides. One, the leading edge is the same length as the other one. On Chinooks and cohos, that leading edge is longer than the other side. Oh. And you'll actually see that. So when you fold that fin back, the tip of that anal fin is longer than it'll go past the fin. It's hard to describe without a fish in hand, but the anal fin rays on a coho and a Chinook are much longer than a rainbow trout. That's a very important character. So if you have a salmonid that has a reddish stripe, a dark outlined adipose fin, spots along the entire tail, and it has a short anal fin, it's probably a rainbow trout. Those are probably the biggest characters. I'm going to share something with the chat, and this is something that a lot of folks don't know about. And I've shared this before on different Facebook groups. This is called the Great Lakes Salmonids Key. And if you want to save this to your phone, if you are an avid angler and you want to save this to your phone, this is a PDF of how to identify Great Lakes salmon and trout in the Great Lakes. It's probably the best. This is the PDF version of it. And just for everyone on here tonight, I'm also going to share the Facebook video of the same PDF file, but you can watch the video and the authors walk through how they identify the fish. So they actually explain. So for those of you that want to learn, click on the video, and then on your phone, click on the video on the laptop, open the PDF file on your phone and follow along. and they explain in detail the characteristics that I'm talking about. It is, you do both of those as your homework. Everyone's got homework tonight that stayed on the call. Okay, you guys stay. We're not going to make you stay after class, but it might be a quiz next week. But this, if you can learn that handout that I sent you, if you can learn it and keep it on your phone, you will be answering trout and salmon ID questions on social media tomorrow if you learn it. I guarantee it, because that handout is the best one I've ever seen, and I use it at my job. I keep it in my phone because I don't work in cold systems, Scotty. I don't work in like cold water systems very often. I do sometimes, but not often. So when I get a trout or salmon in my hand, I have to identify it accurately, and I have to explain. I can't just say what it is. I actually have to write down how many anal rays it had. What were the characteristics of that fish? I have to do that as part of my job. That key helps me do that. So everyone should have a copy of that on them all the time.
Well, I hope they do for next week, because I can guarantee you we'll talk a little bit about the ice fishing show and what Jay saw, but we're also going to get back to more fish identification, because, as I said, there's some of us that perhaps think they know, perhaps they just want people to think they know, and then there's some of us that don't know, and we need to know. As I said, I had a crash course, lucky enough for the CFN Fish Off. You have to become a fish identifier very, very quickly, because if you don't, it's over. But
and before we sign off, I'll go back to Bill's. Was it Bill who asked about the Aurora trout?
It was actually Richard Dunlop.
Okay, so, and I see James mentions about subspecies and morphs and variants, which we have. Now, I will tell you this, that these brook trout, Aurora trout is just a brook trout. It is a morph. It is a color morph. Genetically, they're different. Understand this. When we get into these morphs and variants, whether it be lake trout, rainbow trout, cutthroat trout, doesn't matter. They're genetically different, but the experts will tell you that it's not genetically unique enough to be a different species. And I'm not sure what those numbers are. I'm not a geneticist. Like, in my field as a biologist, I always make this comparison. Like, when you work at a factory, you got your electricians, you got your HVAC guys, you got your plumbers, you got your concrete guys. Everyone's got a specialty. So I'm not a geneticist, but I do know that through the interpretation, it'll be decided whether it is a species, whether it's a subspecies, or just a color morph. And for brook trout, it is just a color morph. It is not an Aurora trout is a unique color morph. Is it cool? Yes. Is it a unique species? No. That's my answer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would not have known. And they are very heavily protected. Obviously, they're endangered. There's rumors that there's only maybe 3 ponds that they cycle when it comes to the stocking and restocking of those ponds to keep the strain vibrant. I have heard that they're under lock and key, very well protected by the province. Is there something that we see as the future? Are we waiting for that body of water to start spreading their population, or is there something that we're missing when it comes to the Aurora trout, Jay? Because it seems to be a very heavily secluded fish.
So to get there, some folks might know better than myself, but I do know that, you're basically you're looking at the headwaters of Lady Evelyn Provincial Park. It's pretty remote to get in there. It's one hell of a process to do that. It's only in 3 lakes, I believe, currently. I've heard rumors that one of the lakes is now privately owned, like someone bought up that property so they can't get in there. And they wouldn't let you fish each lake each year. There was a rotation of opening lakes. And so there, Mike's mentioned it here. So
I just mentioned
that's been going on. I'm not too familiar exactly on how that fish is doing, but they're still managing it, so that they must be doing okay. But yeah, it's I don't think it's going anywhere. Those lakes don't see a lot of pressure, but Scotty, all it takes is, like, when you're in 1 or 2 lakes, that's tough. But I'm also going to bet that there are, and I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure there are a hatchery or 2 in Ontario that have the Aurora trout morph in hand, and they are breeding it to protect that population. Because it's not so much because it's not a unique species, but I think that it is still a unique or a special fish that has, I don't know, this is the angler in me, okay? I'm going to take off my biologist hat. It has value to me as an angler, even though I don't fish for Aurora trout. I may never go up that way to fish for them, but I think it's darn cool. So
that is 100%. Bill, no, I do not have a picture, unfortunately. I apologize, my friend. But they are readily available. If you do Google it, you'll see a whole bunch. Last but not least, Jay, and then we'll end it there. Obviously, everybody wants to know what's the history when it comes to splake. Why were they created? What was the thought process behind it? And where do we see splake in the near future?
Well, I won't tell you that I know a lot about splake. I really don't, but I do know that they were really popular for a long period of time. Not even really in Ontario, like in the Great Lakes proper. There was splake fisheries in Michigan, Superior, and Huron, and they would grow big. And there's still some splake fisheries where those fish still hang out. I see Facebook, social media. I'll see pictures of big splake coming from like Wisconsin in the Lake Superior area in the northern part of Lake Michigan. I think it's a hatchery raised fish and they don't reproduce. So the only way you maintain that population is by stocking, and raising fish is expensive. Like if people knew how much it costs to raise fish, you would be floored how much it costs to raise a fish. Like, and I don't have anything against hatcheries. I support hatcheries, but I think that because money's not endless, I think that we have to think about how we want to spend our hatchery dollars and how we want to focus it. And I think that's why splake stocking has kind of ended for the most part. There's still some lakes with splake in Ontario, and there's a couple I like to go to, especially during early ice. And if anyone hasn't caught a splake, they're fun. They are pretty stupid and they're pretty aggressive. And I guess stupid and aggressive as a fish comes at kind of the same thing. But they're tons of fun. And quite often I'm targeting them in small, like Central Ontario lakes. One of my favorite ways to catch them is I'm basically jigging in like 4 to 8 feet of water. In fact, I've hooked splake, like aggressively hitting a spoon, and I've hooked them in 4 feet of water over 8 feet. And when I set the hook on them, they flip out of the hole because I'm only running like four feet of line, Scotty. They'll flip out of the hole and they'll hit you in the back.
Unreal.
And I've caught splake with frogs in their bellies, if anyone wants a fishing tip. So not saying to use frogs for bait, but they like to feed in these shallow marshes and bays off of main lakes. So don't think you got to fish that main lake point. Some of the shallowest areas in the lake can produce some of the best fishing when it comes to splake. They're a really cool fish.
And I was told back in the day, because not really understanding the hierarchy of fish stocking, just loved my beloved walleye, and could never understood why splake would get the nod every day of the week and twice on Sunday when it came to stocking opportunities rather than walleye. It was told to me then, and Jay, I'll get you to maybe answer the question, but it was to provide anglers an alternative when it came to the hard water season, because at that time, most bass species are closed. Lake trout are too difficult to target. They wanted something that was readily available and, as you said, very aggressive and dumb, so that us hard water anglers had something to catch.
Yeah, and I think too that with splake, splake also filled a gap when acid rain was a problem too, right, Scotty. Like it really helped to replenish a lot of those lakes, and I think that was because splake grow bigger. And so I think what the province was doing, and I think even the local community hatcheries that help support local lakes, like what's that group out of Halliburton, Scotty? Like they're a cool little group up there.
HHOA, Halliburton Ontario Association or Outdoors
Association.
Like,
I love these little fishing clubs that have their own little hatcheries. and they're just keeping their local lakes with fish. I think it's great. And so Splake were part of some of those early programs when the lakes were getting hit hard by acid rain and things like that. And Splake filled a niche, I think, where if you have a tiny shallow lake with a creek flowing through it, it's good for like brook trout that don't get very big. But Splake get bigger. So Splake were kind of used, I think, for like those medium-sized lakes, the ones that might be like a couple miles long and have depths around 30 feet. So in the summertime, there's sanctuary for them. But these lakes were too big for a brook trout, so they would stock Splake in those lakes, and the Splake were hardier. Now I think some of those lakes have lake trout, but I still think that some of the lakes those medium-sized lakes that don't have good spawning areas for lake trout, I think they're still putting. That's why they're still putting Splake in those lakes. And if you everyone goes on the Fish Online app, and if you can set up queries. If you look for Splake, you can find all the Splake lakes in Ontario like that. And Manitoba has a similar program where you can look at where the Splake lakes are. It's not rocket science. I don't have to tell you where they are. You can find them right after I'm off this call. You can go look for a Splake lake near you. Easy to find.
Jay, as always, your segment along with Jay's and Jim's and Lawrence's flies by. But again, I really want to thank you, and I know on behalf of everybody that's been listening and has been adding comments, we thank you as well. This has been awesome, and we're going to be doing this obviously next week with the salmonoid species. We'll get into some of the Great Lakes, perhaps maybe some of our ocean run salmon as well. But needless to say, come with your thinking hats on, because we're going to be talking all about salmon next week with Jay. But until then, drive safe to the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show, and we are really looking forward to rubbing shoulders with you, bud.
Yeah, we'll see you Saturday, Scotty. Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys, and tight lines, and we'll see you next week.
Right on, buddy. All the best. All right. My best to the rest of the family. As always, a great show. Thanks so much for all of you joining. Needless to say, if there's something that you want, a question that you want answered that was perhaps not answered or you didn't get the chance to ask, please put it in the comments, and either myself, Jay, Jim, or somebody else will get to it, and we'll do our best to answer whatever questions that you folks have. In the meantime, if you are interested in participating in our Christina Kodaluk fundraiser, there's some great prizes, great opportunities for anglers, something Christina will truly enjoy. All it takes is a $25 donation. If you are going to the Ultimate Ice Fishing Show this weekend at the International Center, we will be there handing out tickets for you to write in your name and all the pertinent information. And again, we'll be collecting money on behalf of the fundraiser there. In the meantime, folks, it has been an honor to be here every Monday, as it always is. A wealth of information from all three of our guests, Jim, Lawrence, and of course, Jay. Can't thank them enough. And in the meantime, I hope you guys have you guys all have a fantastic week. If you are going to the show, we'll see you Saturday and Sunday. We look forward to that. And in the meantime, stay happy. We got some inclement weather coming. Father Frost is looking to spread some unhappy joy in the next coming days across the West, and of course out here towards the Great Lakes. So be mindful of that. But yeah, stay happy. Love you all. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you on the flip side. All the best. Peace.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all